And welcome to a special episode of Zero Tackle TV. Joining us today, we've got a very special guest. Obviously, when you think of the Tigers, you think of a few names, and one of those names absolutely deserves to be one club man, 250 plus games for the Orange and Black. Chris Lawrence, welcome to Zero Tackle TV. Thanks for your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. Now, obviously, we've got a lot to talk about, but the most pressing questions are probably going to be about your old club. First of all, how's it been watching them from the sidelines since you retired at the end of 2020? What's been so different about that for you?
Yeah, it's obviously been frustrating, like a lot of Tigers fans would be over the last couple of years, and particularly the last little period. It was particularly hard for me. I suppose the first year, having to sit and obviously watch through that, but also being first year out of retirement and having to deal with, not being able to control, obviously, the outcome on the field, whether that's through training, being out there on the field and actually playing in games. So it was very frustrating. And obviously the season just gone, the 2022 season, it was disappointing again, getting the first sort of wooden spoon. But looking at obviously some of the decisions that are made and looking forward, and I suppose the progress in the last 3 months that the club's made, I am very excited in terms of where the club is heading. And I know a lot of teams say that every year, and when they have a poor season and everything like that. But for me, you look at sort of the previous years, and especially the previous 4 years, or even 3 years from when I retired, and then the last couple, you do the same thing over and over, and expect a different result. That's not going to happen. But I think that they have made changes and gone back to, I suppose, people who really care deeply about the club. And I think that's probably the most important thing that you definitely need. You need people, good people around the club, people who care about the club more than, and it's more than just, the performance in the field. It's about everything that's involved with the club and wanting to make that succeed. And, the people, obviously, that got back there in Tim Sheens, Robbie and Benji, definitely have that in spades. It's part of their blood. That's, particularly for Robbie and Benji, a lot of all they know. They've spent so many years at that club and will do anything for that. And I think going above and beyond, and that mentality and what they can do to help develop that sense of, I suppose, belief and care for the club in the younger generation and the players there is going to hopefully bring long-term success. And like anything, when you start with challenges, it's obviously not going to be a short-term fix. I don't think anyone's under that any of those illusions, but we know, and again, knowing how competitive particularly those two are, and knowing how smart a footy brain Tim Sheens is, they're going to all players coming through are going to be the best developed players and the most skillful players that they can be, so that it can allow them to reach their potential.
Obviously, it is, despite the hardships you guys have gone through, it's exciting times moving forward. Obviously, club legends, Sheensy, Benji, Robbie, were you invited to the party, or were you consulted in any way?
Oh, well, so in terms of coaching, mate, I have no intention of ever being an assistant coach or a head coach. I'd like to keep my hair, or at least not go grey for a little period. But so I've been still involved with the club the last couple of years as a part-time career coach, tying in a bit with my education company they have on the side. With that, I'm not so much on the side now, but in full-time and growing. But for me, it was a great way to help mentor some of these younger guys and help provide a bit of direction outside of their sport. So being able to sort of sit from afar, but also sort of inside the inner sanctum, so to speak, and just being really trying to focus on getting the guys' heads right off the field, by having something to focus on and plan for career after sport. So still sort of chipping away and doing that. And just, again, seeing some of the work that these guys are doing, Benji and Robbie already, and Tim, in terms of the planning and what they want to try and achieve, has been great. And I know they're trying to obviously bring people back to the club that have that same care. At this point in time, I haven't sort of got out and done any sort of coaching or anything like that. Would be more than happy to jump in and help out with a session here or there, but on a full-time basis, I think I'll stick inside the office. I don't think it's probably for me, but yeah, definitely would love to help out and around that positional specific skills. Like I know a lot of clubs bring in different people and positions, and I know the Tigers do as well. But I'll leave the whole full-time coaching part to those guys.
Well, obviously, you talk about the pride in and the importance of culture. Obviously, Benji and Robbie, club icons, but they both had to leave at some point to continue their playing career. But obviously, you got to stay with the club from go to woe. How important was that for you personally?
Yeah, look, it was great. Obviously, obviously, I can finish my career to say I'm a one club player. I never wanted to leave. And I do what. Obviously, there was probably different times where I had opportunities to leave myself, and probably the club would tried to get rid of me as well. To be honest, like that's just the nature of football. When I was going through a successive run of injuries. That's just part and parcel. But I look back at it now, and I'm definitely glad I stayed, and I didn't want to, I suppose, look like a jumping ship at a tough time. And looking at those guys, Benji and Robbie, they never wanted to go as well. A lot of the guys who do leave the club have, never did really want to go. Circumstances just permitted that. That was just, no other option. So, and I suppose with those guys shows the fact that they've come back, and particularly with both of them, the first time, or even the times that they both left, didn't end on great terms. So considering that it didn't end on great terms, and yet they're back at the club, shows how much care they got for the club, that they can forego how it ended. And I think that just says a lot about them as people, but how much they care for the club. And same with Sheensy as well. I mean, he was obviously fired from the club, and now has come back as well, which, it just shows that regardless, and like a lot of people, sport is a business, and unfortunately things don't end the way that like, but people always come back to the club, and which is probably again one of the reasons why I sort of say love the club, the people around it. It was the club that gave me an opportunity as a young kid, and I felt I suppose in a sense owed it to the club to repay that faith.
Now, you came into the NRL in 2006. Obviously, you've been with the club for a while, but that's the year after a historic premiership win. What was it like to kind of come into that atmosphere, and how did that change throughout your time at the Tigers?
Well, I only really came in the back end of 2006 and hadn't really trained with the team. So I didn't really get any of that, I suppose, the premiership hangover, because it didn't really, by the time I sort of got there, it was the back end of an 2006 season. So the 2005 season was well and truly gone. And it was a completely different team that, a lot of guys had left. And even when I played, a lot of guys were injured. So by the time I was really training full time with the team, it was 2007. And again, the team was different again. So that's it. I never really, I suppose, got the feeling of being part of that sort of 2005 winning team. And then there was definitely a shift across the time. Obviously, a lot of change in plays in that 2007 and 8 period. And then I felt around that 2009 period, there was a lot more stability. We started to find some more consistency in the games. Unfortunate that we made a run and just missed out in the semis, but that definitely set us up for the next few years. And in 2010 and 11, and being top four for both years in a row. And to be honest, I think we missed an opportunity to win a premiership in that time. I definitely think we should have won a premiership. So, you don't, they're hard to come by, and you need to put yourself in the position. We put ourselves in the position, but, luck, execution, things just didn't go our way, which allowed us to get across the line. And then 2012, I think we're favourites to win the comp. We just missed out. And then again, for Tim Sheens, obviously lose his job at the end of that. And you look back at the time and say, oh yeah, it was a disappointing season. It was, but when you go back in hindsight and you lose a guy round one named James Tedesco, at that point in time, it didn't seem like very significant, but you look back now and think, well, if you had him for a whole season, does your season change? Because you don't get to change your spine, and he gets a full season, and knowing what he's been able to do now and having a full year of him being developed under Tim Sheens, things could have been different. So, and obviously from there, things, obviously the constant changes definitely, I suppose both playing roster and coaches, it's always hard to get any continuity. And I suppose it's, what comes for, the chicken or the egg. You want to have consistency, but if you don't get results, you need to change. So, but the more you change, then the harder it is to get consistency. So I think that's always the hard thing. And obviously at the club, we just haven't, got it right. We've had changing in players. So, obviously it's not the players. We've brought players in other clubs who have been successful and put them in an environment we haven't made the comp. We've got coaches who come and been successful and hasn't been there. So, we just haven't got the mix right at the club. So hopefully, again, moving forward, they have got that dynamic right, and over time can get that blend that it gets us back as a winning team.
We talk about that challenge in finding the balance between continuity and results, especially for a proud team that finds themselves kind of towards the foot of the ladder for a little while. Do you think that ends up becoming a problem that stops clubs from being able to get back as they try to find that balance, and then it becomes this perpetual cycle of we're not getting one or the other, and then coaches get fired and then you have to start all over again? Do you think that the Tigers might have fallen into that trap in the last few years?
Yeah, definitely. I think so, because you look at, again, that the whole aim of a NRL team is to win games and win a premiership. That's you start every preseason, day one, and you're there to win a premiership. If you're not there to win a premiership, you really shouldn't be there. That's the aim of the game. So every club is, and that's what they're chasing to do. Obviously, there's a lot of flow-on impacts about what a rugby league team can have on the community and the fans and the members and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it's to win games and to win a premiership. So you have to look at changes. And again, I think, but as I said, the more changes you make, both in coaches, both in players, week to week, the harder it is to get consistency, to build any continuity, and that makes it harder to perform. So, I think, I do really applaud, I suppose, the club in terms of the decision they've sort of gone with now, and it probably came by chance to an extent to what they've done now. And I know, there hasn't been any games, so we can't go based on results, but I think they've made a decision, and that we're going to go back and try to form an identity as a club, and that people as part of the club come in that are buying into that identity, which is what the Tigers DNA is. Because I think the big thing about constantly changing players and coaches is that they come with their own identity, own ideals, and then there's just a constant, I suppose, struggle for what the playing style is and how you should play, and versus the strengths of the club. Whereas I think by having this is the direction of the club, this is the DNA, this is the club going. People who come into the club are aware of that, and if they don't fit, then you don't be part of the club, or you don't sign with the club. Having that, I think, clarity is that first step. Having that clarity will help, especially then, for the juniors coming through. They're pretty clear about how the Tigers are going to be as a football club, how they're going to play, how, what you need to, the type of person and player you need to be if you want to be a Tigers player. And it's probably something that there's been no clarity on in the previous years, because it's always a different message and different narrative, because you've got changing players and coaches. Obviously,
you talk about identity issues, and you talk about 2010, 2011 era as well as kind of a missed opportunity for the Tigers, but things were going really well for you personally, including a call up into the Kangaroos squad. Obviously, prior to this World Cup, there was a bit of uncertainty and a bit of criticism about players not wanting to commit because of other opportunities, or because they wanted to kind of help the game grow in other areas. And I suppose from your own personal experience, what was it like for you when you got selected? And was that something where you thought, oh, there's no question over that, that's what people are striving for, yeah?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I can't really speak on the behalf of other players and in terms of their commitments for country representation. But for me, pulling on the green and gold jersey, was always a dream and a goal of mine. I got to pull on the Australian schoolboys green and gold jersey as a schoolboy, and that was special. And being able to do that and sing your national anthem and play against England at the time for there, you always thought one day if we play NRL and then if I could do this and represent Australia playing first grade rugby league would be amazing. So for me it was just a dream come true, very surreal experience. Got to make my test debut in 2010 against New Zealand and at Eden Park, which was just a surreal experience. And then again, 2011, getting to play in the Four Nations tour, got to play every game and finish up and winning a Four Nations final, playing in Darren Lockyer's last ever game. So yeah, it was definitely a dream come true. And for me, I know there's been a lot of talk about other players, but for every person, regardless of country, you pull on that jersey that represents that country, and also the people that come before it is very special.
Obviously, you spent it was a pretty early rise, but after those, I think it was 6 tests that you played in the green and gold, kind of you didn't return to the international arena. Is that something that kind of bothered you as your career went on at that time, where you suddenly were in the team and then you suddenly weren't, or you just kind of move on with it and accept the reality?
Oh, well, for me, it was a lot to do with injuries. Like I dislocated my hip into 2011, came back from that, but probably the injury that hampered me, the most, had a couple of ankle injuries in 2012, and then a bad one at the start of 2013, which pretty much, had to make the decision early on. Do I rule myself out for the season? It was a season and ankle injury, or play through injury. And, in hindsight, again, I look at the decision I made to continue to play because we had other injuries and I'd put the team first, but to probably the detriment of my own performance, because I played poorly because I was, playing on one leg. If I'd taken the more selfish attitude, but I could have probably, called it a season, got my leg right and got back quicker. But again, you make those decisions at the time based on how I felt, and then that obviously hampered the start of my 2014 season. And if you look at a time period, that's there 2 years where in and out with your injury. And again, like with anything, if you you get back to playing, it's you sort of drop down in the pecking order in that sense. And again, at the time, the Tigers weren't playing well, so as a group, and then when you start doing that, you start finding individuals start to have I suppose dips in form and inconsistency. So it then took a lot of time to get my confidence back in terms of finding my form. And I suppose for then is right around the time that I was having that positional change from the centres in the end of the back row, which is something I was really looking forward to. So that's probably around the time when I found that consistency again, and felt like I started playing some consistent football. But obviously, when you do get that taste of football, you always like to, of rep football, you always want to go back to that. But I wasn't kicking stones about it. For me, just to get back and playing consistent first grade football was something that I was sort of striving to do.
Well, you talk about the durability. You must be so durable to still play 250 games despite the amount of injuries that you've had throughout your career. Obviously, post-playing has been a big bugbear recently, with the CBA talk still going on and talking about protections and looking after players and making sure they're set up. You've obviously kept yourself busy in the time since you've retired. What can you tell us about what you're up to these days?
Yeah, it's probably something was really proactive with, and I put this definitely all down to my parents. I debuted at 17 years of age, still in high school, and the first thing my dad said to me after congratulations was, make sure you focus on your exams, you're still doing your HSC exams, don't waste all that hard work. And just that one comment probably kept me grounded enough to go, yeah, okay, that's great, I'm playing first grade, but there's things outside. So that probably started my journey in delving in education. I went to uni, dropped out of uni and at my first go, because just the structure didn't suit athletes. Went on my own journey in terms of vocational learning and short courses to the point where, and delved in a few different small businesses to the point where at the time around 2012, 2013, my business partner and I, whose business partner was like a lot of young athletes who never sort of made first grade and went down their own education path. So I looked at, there was no education structures built for athletes, traditional education, universities and vocational providers. Their delivery model didn't suit athletes, and it made no sense for them to change for athletes because they made it such a small cohort, part of their total cohort. So for us, we wanted to create education specifically designed for athletes. So we started doing that by delivering the certificates 3 and 4 in fitness. Did that over a number of years to the point where we thought, let's get some more feedback. Conducted a research survey in sort of 2016 with all athletes that then turned it into a 2-year research report in which we partnered with Western Sydney University and had our findings academically published in the International Journal of Sport and Society about empowering elite athlete education. And that gave us an education model we knew would work across all athletes all across Australia and across multiple courses. And we then found ourselves partnering with different universities to have direct pathway through our short courses, vocational training, and then into their university courses. From sort of the, a few years out from when I did actually finish, I knew that obviously, football wasn't going to be forever, and I knew that football was going to end soon. And for us as a company, we weren't a vocational education provider. We essentially just became a marketplace, but we thought we wanted to become our own provider or our own private TAFE so that we could then own the course and deliver it outside of athletes. So after a few year process, it did time well in that we did get our application through right around the time I was about to retire. And so for us, that allowed us to deliver vocational education courses to the general public. So we've been doing that now for the last couple of years, and as well as growing into other sectors, which again, just opportunities for us presented during COVID. We had a blended online delivery model that worked with athletes through COVID, obviously in lockdown. A lot of education providers were unable to deliver online. We got an opportunity to work in employment services. So for those not aware, for those any person out of work that's sort of on government benefits because they're out of work, would go to an employment services company who will then try to find RTOs like ourselves to deliver job skill programs to upskill them to get them back into work. So for us, we were one of the very few who deliver online and engage you online. So we picked up a couple of programs, a couple of contracts, and that sort of snowballed. And for us, our ability to tailor education design for a specific cohort, something we've learned across sort of 10 years working with athletes, gave us a really good edge in that area, and has allowed to make, have an impact on so many lives and help really upskill and place a lot of job seekers into work, which has been fantastic to see. So that sort of the business, along with our being able to help upskill people in workplaces and help those leaving school in vocational qualifications, has really sort of helped grow the business quite significantly. And to see that sort of synergy of again what some of these people go through and some of the similarities that athletes go through. Yes, they might be elite, and yes, they the best at what they do, but that's their profession. A lot of the athletes we work with are in the same boat when it comes to learning education, that a lot of lack of confidence, unsure of what they want to do, and because of that don't want to commit to any long-term study and just want to shy away from it. So knowing and helping a lot of these different groups has been able to have an impact on trying to empower them to reach new heights and hopefully onto further education or employment.
Well, I can see on your shirt, obviously, you've got One Training, which is the primary wing of the business, but One Wellbeing, is that a separate entity? Is that another branch of the organisation?
So One Wellbeing, that's been the company we've been running since 2012, and that's our athlete education arm. So that's our athlete-only, athlete-focused mentoring, education, and learning support network that we provide. And for us, that was, again, something that we've not only the course that we have on scope, but became the marketplace of education for athletes. One Training then became our registered training arm, so our private TAFE. So that allow us to, again, own the course. So we run all our courses that are owned through One Training there, and then keep One Wellbeing as our athlete-specific courses.
And obviously, yourself, you've gone through a lot of challenges. Obviously, you talked about the injuries you had at the early stages of your career. Probably none was more severe than the injury you suffered towards the end of your career with the facial collapse and the absorbing process, I suppose, that went through with recovering from that. Did you personally, you talk about making sure people are supported. Did you feel adequately supported at the time, both in terms of your mental health as well as your physical recovery through the club?
Yeah, look, I think it was such a weird one because it was such a different injury. And to be honest, I don't think a lot of people at the club probably knew how bad it was. Because, again, you have, say, a broken jaw or, a cracked cheekbone, it sort of thought of, okay, go get surgery and, get a plate and you're back into it. And as a player, when you hear that, you sort of, you think the same thing, okay, it's, definitely no good that you're having surgery, but, they'll be right. It's not a season-ending injury. It'll be a couple of months and they'll be right. So it probably wasn't until probably a month, of, at least 3 or 4 weeks after my injury where a lot of people only really fully understood the extent. And even to be honest, the first week or two, I didn't really fully appreciate the extent of how long it was going to take off. I thought, yep, I'll go to the hospital, get surgery, put the plates in and go. Like I didn't really understand it was, how long a process it was going to be. So, once I suppose it was more apparent to me and more aware to everyone in the club, definitely got that support. But again, being in New Zealand at the time and just unsure of what to do, again, the doctors there was a lot, pretty much had to be in limbo, 2 weeks of just waiting there until the swelling went down before I could fly home. So until I sort of got that clarity, and again, it was like, oh yeah, this is actually quite a serious injury. Yeah, definitely then got obviously that support to again, help me through the process. And definitely once, got the surgery back there, but for me, the main support was my family and friends. They were, fantastic during that period. I got to give a massive shout out to my wife. She was, definitely my rock through that period. And, I was a bit incapable there, particularly the first couple of weeks after my surgery, was in quite a bit of pain, and couldn't really eat any solid food. So she definitely became very imaginative with some of the blends and the things that she would make for me. But so the support of those guys, really helped me sort of get back on the field.
Was there a point during that recovery process where you thought you were done?
As soon as I got injured, I thought, I thought this was
no.
I thought, I always said to my wife really didn't want me coming back and playing. She told me I'm not playing footy again. And I said, initially I said okay, but I said, I'll see what the surgeon says. But I made a deal with her. I said, if the surgeon says that if all the surgery goes well and if there's no increased risk of getting re-injured, then I'll have a crack. If he says I'm at increased risk now, then I told I made a promise I would I'd quit there and then. And but he said no, that's once if healed again, if everything had healed properly and had to get ongoing scans, that he goes, your face is stronger than ever because you got metal plates all throughout your face. So for me, I had a burning desire to come back and play. I only came back and then finished that 2019 season, played one more year, but they definitely gave me clarity when I knew the time was right that I was done. But in that point in time, I wasn't done, and a lot of it, to be honest, again, a lot of people ask me this, and it wasn't probably until I started going through the rehab and the tougher stages of rehab. Not saying the early stages were really tough pain-wise and mentally, but then having to transform my body after losing 13 kilos, that when the actual tough training, and it was all by myself, pretty much doing a 8-week pre-season by itself, essentially is what I did. It mentally was challenging, but for me, again, was not going to be playing any rep footy, was going to obviously be probably coming off the bench or playing reserve grade, wasn't getting any fitter, faster, stronger. So why was I going to come back and play? And at the time, realistically, I thought, we could probably make the semis. But I think we just missed out the 2019 season, but wouldn't say we're a powerhouse team in that, that we're going to obviously, make a grand final or, favourites to win or anything like that. So why was it coming back? And for me, it was all, I suppose, about my family. You a lot of times you play, all you want to do is make your family proud. And for me, I had a young daughter who at the time wasn't really old enough to know that a dad played footy. So I thought I'd love to just have that opportunity to her be old enough to come on the field, or just understood that, her dad played footy. So for me, that was the only motivation, just to, sort of make my family proud and have that moment, my daughter, which, I was fortunate enough to do. And after 2019 game, and I wasn't re-signed at that point, I thought, look, that could be it, because there wasn't sort of any room at the Tigers for me at that sort of time with the salary cap. So I thought, look, it is what it is. I've came back and played and got the moment with my daughter, and for me that was really what I just wanted to do. So that was probably one of the main motivations why I decided to come back. And So did I ever think about giving away? Once I realised why, I couldn't understand why I had the burning desire. Once I knew why, no, there was no, I was gonna, if I gave everything and I couldn't come back, or, I had that shied away from contact, then I would make the call, but I'll at least say I gave it everything. But I sort of never thought about not coming back.
Obviously, one of the big things that's come up this year, especially regarding players who've recently retired, or even those who've retired quite a while ago in terms of Paul Green and such, is the kind of unseen effects, at least immediately after your career, of potential brain damage and concussion-related injuries and detrimental effects. Obviously, doctors have been calling for more league players to kind of donate their brains to science posthumously. I don't know if you've made a decision on that, but is that a concern? Just the whole concussion aspect and the brain deterioration, is that something that you're mindful of, given that you played so many games and had such a relatively long career?
Yeah, I think so. I think probably players in this new generation, I would say, probably don't have to worry about as much because of the how much attention it's given to and the care for when people get head knocks. I think, players who have recently retired, I think a lot of, and ex-players, and even I have always the thoughts about, the little head knocks and the concussions that you had. And, back in the day, it was a badge of honor. You just sort of stumbled away and got on with it. Yeah. And it's that sort of those times you start thinking, well, how much sort of effect did that have? And obviously, there's still plenty of research, and I know, Dr. Andrew Gardner at Newcastle University is doing some great work on research there, and got to actually do Royce Simmons's charity walk alongside him. So definitely picked his brain about his thoughts around the different things and learnt quite a lot from him about that. And, so knowing that there are plenty of other factors that are involved in terms of some of the, the brain injuries that we're seeing. And it's not just concussion, but no doubt, concussion is one factor, and it's definitely not healthy to have your brain repeatedly hit and bruised all the time. But I think the fact that they've put the steps in place now is a really good thing. And again, do I worry about it? Yeah, look, it's not ideal, but I can't control it. Like, that was years ago. And if you ask me now, knowing what you know about brain injury, would you go back and still have the same career and do it all over again? And the same injuries? Yeah, I probably would, because I got to live out a dream. Yeah, the highs and lows, the pain, all the things that you had to go through. But in saying that, all those down times probably shaped me and to be the person I am today, and have hopefully going to give me the strength and skills to excel in my career post football. Excellent.
We're nearly out of time. I can see that Zoom's telling me that we're going to be wrapping up soon. I just want to ask one more question. Just back to what you spoke on earlier about these legends of the club coming back to the club, and that there's this kind of sense that those who buy into the real community spirit of the club will always be welcome back. You were there during the big four era of the Tedesco, Mitch Moses, Aaron Woods. All three of them left. Obviously, Teddy's unlikely, but I know there's been a lot of talk about Mitch Moses coming back to the club. Do you think that kind of still applies to the playing ranks as well, that they'll be welcomed back into the fold, despite what was kind of wasn't a hostile leaving, but it wasn't the most pleasant circumstances to their departure?
Yeah, definitely. And a perfect example, like those four never wanted to leave, but those four wanted to stay and wanted to stay together. So in a case of they actually didn't want to leave, just circumstance, how it played out to the point where they felt they had no option, and obviously, left. And so
it's a bit like Robbie in that respect.
A bit like, Robbie, a bit like every, a lot of the people that, have obviously been at the club have not wanted to go. And obviously, Teddy especially, and definitely Mitch have kicked on and really excelled at their new clubs. So they probably look at it as a blessing in disguise that they did leave and they've been able to do that. But yeah, 100%, would love to, I think, have those guys back. And I think, them especially, and everyone who's played for the club, definitely has a soft spot for the club. There's something about the Tigers that, even with the fact that we haven't been successful, over this last period, everyone has, whether you play one game, 100 games, or 350 or whatever that Robbie had played, you've got they've got this tie to the club that has a soft spot for it, and again, everyone everyone wants to, I suppose, get back involved with support. I just don't feel like in the previous years, because of the lack of where's the club going or direction, or I just think there's been a lot of players that didn't feel like they had the ability or wanted to come back. So hopefully, again, with those, the people we said, Sheensy, Robbie and Benji being back, shows, okay, this is what the club's about, and it's about welcoming those back in all aspects.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Chris Lawrence. It's been fun, been interesting, and certainly very informative to learn about kind of the challenges that you've faced and that the life you're making for yourself after football. Thanks so much for your time, and hopefully we'll talk to you again when the Tigers are top of the table.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.